Who Gets to Decide? A liberty-based podcast that brings a little piece of sanity to a confused society drowning in a culture of craziness. And here is your host, Seth Martin.
Well, all right. What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Who Gets to Decide. This is episode 622, I think. And thank you for coming in. Thank you for listening. Always glad you're here. Always happy you're listening. Well, there's some interesting stuff happening in the world of politics. And I want to just go back down memory lane as part of bringing this information to you and just remind you where we all started hearing about Jeffrey Epstein for the first time, or at least I did. I don't recall hearing before this arrest was made, and then this lady from ABC News was lamenting the fact that she was forced to drop a story that she had on Jeffrey Epstein, a breaking story. And, you know, now we're at a place where the U.S. Congress, there's been a complete flip. And I want to talk about it today. I want to talk about the politics of it. I want to talk about what might be going on. We don't really know what's going on, but what might be going on and what this really means, you know, both what does it mean that this took place in America, and if we can't stop it, what does it mean for Americans? These are all really important questions in my mind. And so I have a number of clips that I want to play. This first clip is from, like I said, Amy Robach, I guess is her name, and she was a reporter at ABC, and she was flat out told who's Jeffrey Epstein, which I don't think it was really who's Jeffrey Epstein so much as it was like, we don't want you to report on this. And, you know, then really all the speculation started, and people have been following this for years. Someone like Whitney Webb has been following this story for a really long time and has uncovered quite a bit of information, history, the origins of all this, where it all started, why Jeffrey Epstein, and all this kind of stuff. And the part that I'm interested in, the reason I talk about this on this show and have talked about it numerous times before, is because if you're going to have a government, okay, and the government is going to use force, okay, that's what governments do. Governments use force. And so if you're going to have a quote unquote legitimate government, how does that government operate? And we have a roadmap or a recipe for that type of government, for a government. And the part that I'm really focused on about this story and about Epstein in general is, do we really have the government that we think we have? And that's an important thing, because if we don't, then this is kind of a reason to change it or to overthrow it or to replace it. Just like the Declaration of Independence said, whenever governments become tyrannical and they don't serve the people have a duty and a right. They have a right and a duty to overthrow that government. And to me, this is why the whole Epstein thing is important. Now, I'm not suggesting we run out into the streets and have a second American Revolution or anything like that, but I think this is an important question, because what you have on the Democratic side, for example, is you have Democrats running around talking about voting rights and the sacred right to vote and challenging people to get involved in the system. If you want to change the system, engage the system. We have a plebiscite type system where we vote and we are represented by, you know, people that we vote for. That's kind of the story, right? But this story, the story of Jeffrey Epstein, really calls all that into question. And I think that's very important if you're trying to consider your government as being legitimate or not, if you're trying to decide whether or not your government's legitimate. So let's play this clip from Amy Robach. I just want to make sure that we start at least here. I mean, you could start way at the beginning, but I think this is an important place to start, because the signs were early. There were early signs that powerful people were causing this story to be buried. And this is right from the horse's mouth, right from somebody at ABC who had the story and was basically told, yeah, don't talk about that because, we want to make sure we get to interview the royal family and, get access to Kate and William's babies and things like that. That's more important to ABC. So let's start this clip, and just as a reminder of where a lot of this began for a lot of us.
I've had the story for 3 years. I've had this interview with Virginia Roberts. We would not put it on the air. First of all, I was told, who's Jeffrey Epstein? No one knows who that is. This is a stupid story. Then the palace found out that we had her whole allegations about Prince Andrew and threatened us a million different ways. We were so afraid we wouldn't be able to interview Kate at will that also quashed the story. And then Alan Dershowitz was also implicated in it because of the planes. She told me everything. She had pictures. She had everything. She was in hiding for 12 years. We convinced her to come out. We convinced her to talk to us. It was unbelievable what we had. Clinton, we had everything. I tried for 3 years to get it on, to no avail, and now it's all coming out, and it's like these new revelations, and I freaking had all of it. I'm just so pissed right now. Like, every day I get more and more pissed because I'm just like, oh my God, what we had was unreal. Other women backing it up. Hey, yep. Brad Edwards, the attorney, 3 years ago, saying, there will come a day when we will realize Jeffrey Epstein was the most prolific pedophile this country has ever known. And I had it all 3 years ago.
Okay, so this was 2018. This was a hot mic, okay? So she's mic'd up. She's in the studio, probably ready to do a show or maybe just finished doing a show. This particular video was provided by Project Veritas, which is a really good organization. These are the guys that do these undercover stings of people, and they published this back in 2018. Now, what she's saying is she had the story 3 years prior, so 2015. And this is just another thing that to observe about government. We kind of pretend like justice is blind and justice doesn't see race and justice doesn't see power. And, it treats everybody equally and all this kind of stuff. And the fact is, it just doesn't. Okay. This is another fantasy about our government, is that a poor black male gets the same treatment under the law as some rich and powerful guy that flies around on, Gulfstreams. And this is just, it's a fantasy. It just is not true. And this is just another example of how that's demonstrated in the way that stories are buried, and news, real news is hidden from the public, because powerful people that run ABC are also people that are involved with Epstein and they're buds or whatever. So look, you watch my back, I'll watch yours kind of thing. Kind of the boys club argument that a lot of people have. So this is 2018. She says she had the story in 2015. So basically for 10 years, there's been a huge cover-up going on with Epstein, and really even longer than that. But I would say at least 10 years. All right, let's jump into the next clip. This next clip is Virginia Roberts' writer. This is the lady that wrote the book that Virginia Roberts, I guess it was like her biography or something. And this is on Sunday morning. Now, let me kind of set this up a little bit. You can tell, I want you to pay attention. The reporter kind of asks about Donald Trump's involvement. And I just want you to pay attention to the reaction from the reporter at CBS News. She just is clearly disappointed that the author says what she says. So let's jump into this clip. I thought this was interesting as well. This is pretty recent.
Did she mention President Trump at all in your discussions?
Oh, she absolutely did. I was in Australia in October, weeks before the presidential election. She was a huge Trump fan. Two reasons for that. One, she had met Trump on numerous occasions because she worked at Mar-a-Lago Spa in Florida, which he owns. And her father also worked there and knew Trump pretty well. So she was introduced to Trump. He was kind to her. The second reason she wanted Trump to be president was because he campaigned on releasing the Epstein Files. And she was excited about that. So, yes, we talked about Trump a lot.
As a crusader to release the Epstein Files, in that sense.
She was very excited that he had made that one of the main planks of his campaign. And she felt validated by it.
And here it comes.
But she never talked about him in any sense that he was involved in any of this.
No, he was not, as far as she knew, and again, she was there for 2+ years. But as far as she knew, he was not involved in the ring of trafficking that Epstein was working.
Yeah, I don't know. It just seems like that reporter was very disappointed in that answer. And so, but this is important. The reason I'm bringing this up is because this had something to do with the Congress getting more interested in passing a law that basically forced the DOJ to release this information. So let me just kind of set it up. What it was looking like, okay, so Trump's running for president. And he's like, we're going to release the Epstein Files. That's what he's saying on the campaign. And make no mistake, a lot of people voted for Trump because this was one of the things they voted for. A lot of talk was going on about this. We've been talking about it for a while on the show. We talked about how Tucker mentioned it in his speech at Turning Point USA, which I think is also a critical event that set off a chain of events that ultimately led to Charlie Kirk's assassination, is my thinking. Now, I don't have any evidence of that, but there was just a lot of, maybe one time we'll go into it sometime, and we'll show all the Google searches that took place around, about 10 days after that event at Turning Point USA, and where those searches took place. They were taking place from Washington, D.C., from Israel. They were searching on key people at the university, security people, the hospital that they ended up taking Charlie to. There's just a lot of stuff there. I mean, there is a huge cover-up going on in the government, it looks like to me. And it just doesn't look like this guy, Tyler Robinson, killed Charlie Kirk. I mean, he didn't have a gun when he was running across the roof. There's been people online that have shown if you take that gun apart and put it in the biggest backpack you can find, it won't fit. So the question then becomes, how did the gun get from the roof to the woods? And that's a very critical piece of information if you're going to say that Tyler Robinson killed Charlie Kirk, okay? But the point here is that Epstein was a big part of why Trump got elected. People wanted to get to the bottom of this. People were saying, and are still saying, that, just like I've been talking on here, that we don't live under a government that's of, for, and by the people. We live under a government that serves connected people, rich and powerful people tied to the banking system, people tied to foreign countries, people tied to the stream of money that is the monetary system. And this is the reason people are so interested in this. It all kind of comes down to, your life is getting it's more and more difficult to live your life. It's more and more difficult to hold on to the things you own, your house and your cars and your career and things like this. And so people really felt like that this connectedness that came with the Epstein story was a big part of why things aren't working for the average man and woman in America. I mean, there's other reasons, but people felt like that this was a big part of it. And they thought it was disgusting that thousands and thousands of people have been victimized and all these rich and powerful people are just getting away with it. Okay. So that was bad. When Trump came out and said, excuse me, are you talking about Epstein, that creep? Why are we still talking about this? People lost their shit, okay? People were very upset about that. And people in Congress have been upset about it. I mean, Marjorie Taylor Greene and Thomas Massie have been crusading for this, right? Trying to get this information released. We've showed clips of Thomas Massie asking questions of Kash Patel and naming names and naming, like he named this guy, Jeff Staley, who worked for UBS, was a former CEO of UBS. They have actually mentioned his name. And then it was like a billionaire in Canada, billionaires here in America, someone that owns a musician empire or a music empire. And he just rattled off all these different kinds of people that are allegedly implicated in this. And there were only 20 names, but there's many, many more than that. It's just that even in Congress, they had 20 names that were redacted. And Kash Patel was just pretending like nothing to see here, And people are tired of it. They're tired of the fact that we supposedly have this government that's of, for, and by the people. But there's this shit that goes on that nobody knows anything about. It seems to be very, very crooked. There's victims all over the place. And there's rich and powerful people that are connected to government that are getting away with it. And this is just, people are losing their minds over this. And so it looked like, when Trump said that, he's in the cabinet room and somebody's asking Pam Bondi questions and he kind of breaks in and says, excuse me, are you asking about that creep, Jeffrey Epstein? Why are you talking about that guy? So it looked like at that point, somebody had gotten to Trump, or maybe people in the government came to Trump and said, look, we can't do this, because if you pursue this line of thinking and you continue on this path, it'll destroy America. I don't know what was told to Trump. Somebody either said, hey, if you continue, we're going to kill you, or hey, if you continue, this will destroy America and it'll destroy America on your watch. And maybe he didn't want that because he's a narcissist. I don't know. Okay. But we definitely know that Trump essentially said, I'm not spending any more time on this. And we don't know why. And then, like I said, fast forward, Thomas Massie's been pushing, Marjorie Taylor Greene's been pushing. And then, this is a very important thing. Well, let's play this first, and we'll come back to what seemed to dislodge the logjam, because there was definitely a logjam before.
And after months of back and forth, the House has overwhelmingly passed a bill ordering the Justice Department to release the Epstein Files. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Kira Phillips. Just moments ago, the House making history with a near unanimous vote that brings us just a step closer to seeing DOJ's files on convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein and his underage sex trafficking ring. Here's the moment the vote was officially gavelled out.
On this vote, the yeas are 427, the nays are 1. 2/3 being in the affirmative, the rules are suspended, the bill is passed, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table.
And then it became news. Jay O'Brien joins me now from the Hill, along with our senior political correspondent, Rachel Scott, also Washington managing editor, Catherine Falders, and law professor and contributor, Kim Whaley. So, Rachel, what's the...
Okay, before we go to Rachel, 427-1. Now, everybody, you don't have to be like a political scholar to know that that doesn't happen very often. And so the question is, how did this happen? How did such an overwhelming majority vote take place in the House? And I think what happened is there were plenty of people that were just willing to let this kind of die. And then what happened is there were some emails that were released that seemed to implicate Trump. Jeffrey Epstein's brother was corresponding with Jeffrey Epstein himself. So Mark Epstein and Jeffrey Epstein were corresponding, and Donnie, he mentioned Donnie T, it didn't say Donald Trump, it said Donnie T, and it mentioned girls and just all this kind of stuff. And now we don't know anything about whether or not this conversation is real, but the Democrats latched onto this like it was catnip. They really got excited. And all of a sudden, this momentum started to build. And what was interesting is you had people like Mike Johnson, who's Speaker of the House. He's talking about how worried he is about having this vote. And so essentially what the House did is they passed this maneuver that forced Mike Johnson, or forced the House to take up a vote. So Mike Johnson did not bring this to the floor of the House like the normal process. This was forced to the House in other words, they went over Mike Johnson's head and forced this vote in the House. And all of a sudden, all these Republicans got behind it. Mike Johnson was on, people are interviewing him in the halls of Congress, and he's concerned. Him and the president are very concerned about this, that certain information is not going to be handled properly, and the victims are going to be further victimized and all this. And we're going to get to that in a second. But I don't know, this Mike Johnson guy, I don't trust him. I don't trust any of these people, okay? None of them. I think they're all crooks, except for Marjorie Taylor Greene and Thomas Massey. I think the rest of them are pretty much crooks. Now, there was one dissenting vote. There's a guy named Clay Higgins. And he said, well, he thought the victims would be further victimized, and so that's why he didn't vote for it. But when we get to the end here of this ABC footage, I'm going to show you why I think that's a bunch of BS. But just the interesting thing is that it went from no interest to unanimous interest. And a lot of that had to do with these early emails that were released that had something to do with Donald Trump. Maybe. We don't even really know. And Mark Epstein, somebody interviewed Mark Epstein, and he said he wasn't going to comment on it. It was funny. He was like, I'm not going to comment on any of this. This is a private conversation between me and my brother. The only thing I'll say is Bubba was not President Clinton. It's like, I don't know, man. The guy just seems like he's lying. He seems like he runs the local union for garbage collection or something. Let me finish this clip and we'll jump into the next one.
Action, Ben, on Capitol Hill. You've been out there. Who have you seen come down the steps? What have you learned?
Yeah, we're still waiting for a number of lawmakers. And excuse me as I turn around, because the chamber, of course, is just...
Yeah, I'm going to go to the next clip because she's just waiting for these lawmakers to come out. And the next clip is this other guy talking. I want to comment on.
Yeah, and remember, Kira, this is a vote that had to be forced to occur. Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, did not put this legislation on the floor for a vote through the normal order of business. He had opposed this legislation at every single step of the way. And this was, in a sense, a mutiny. It was all House Democrats signing on to what's called a discharge petition, which forces this vote to occur. A handful of Republicans, as Rachel mentioned, signing on with them as well, going against the wishes of the White House, going against the wishes of Speaker Mike Johnson, forcing this vote to occur. And it was only after the tea leaves started to really show that dozens of Republicans were going to break ranks with the White House and the Speaker over the weekend and vote for this that the president came out and said, oh, in fact, I want House Republicans to vote for this legislation. All of that was not enough to get Clay Higgins's vote. He was the lone Republican no vote at this hour. He said that in his view, this legislation would only serve to further victimize those who were abused by Jeffrey Epstein by allowing information about their cases, their identities to come to light, things of that nature. Now, the proponents of this legislation dispute that. They say, first, that there have been many victims who vocally want these files to be released, including those who spoke at a press conference this morning on Capitol Hill. But also, the proponents of this bill say that they have taken painstaking efforts to ensure that the identities of the victims don't come out, information about this case or confidential witnesses and things like that do not come out. But that's been the argument that the Speaker and other Republicans have made against this bill too. But they voted for this bill, Kira, despite the fact that they believe that it's flawed because of the immense pressure that they were under, in part from their constituents and in part from their own colleagues.
Okay, yeah. So once this became obvious, I think, people just said, okay, I'm going to vote for it. And nobody wanted to be on the down. I mean, I don't know why Clay Higgins would want to be on the downside of this, but most of these guys did not want to be that guy, right? Because I'm sure Clay Higgins is going to get trounced in his midterm election. Now, there is another possibility, okay? We would be remiss if we didn't mention the other possibility, but I just don't think it's a very likely possibility. And that's the possibility that this was the plan all along by Donald Trump. This is some sort of 4D chess move because he wasn't, let's say for whatever reason, maybe he didn't want his name associated with releasing all this. Maybe he was trying to protect some people that he knows that are caught up in this. I don't know. And this is a way that he can release the information and tell his buddies that he was going to protect. Sorry, man, I couldn't do anything. The House, they went against me, and that's, I just don't, I don't know, man. I've heard this argument about 4D chess or something with Trump before. I just don't see it, man. I just don't think the guy is that smart. But the 4D chess argument goes a little bit like this. Maybe somebody showed up and said, hey, Trump, you can't release this. But he still wanted to release it. Okay, so maybe they leaked some information that smelled like Donald Trump was involved. Hey, there's some stuff here we could leak to the public, and the Democrats will jump on it just with full force because they'll think I'm involved, and they'll want to impeach me. They'll want to get rid of me, and they'll think this is a predicate for getting rid of Trump. So they'll get behind it. And then we'll create this huge momentum situation in the House where everybody will have to vote for it. There won't be any amendments. See, this is the thing. If you have more than a 2/3 majority, nobody can offer up any amendments like, well, I want private individuals' names need to be redacted. We can't reveal sources and methods. And they start putting all this stuff in here that kind of boxes up the bill. But this bill, they couldn't put any amendments forth because it was such a huge majority that there are no amendments. Okay, there's no exceptions. It's done. It's out. It's going to go out, and there's no way to stop it. There's no way to protect pieces of information or to make parts of it more opaque or anything like that. Okay, so this is kind of a very interesting situation, but I just don't think it's a result of 4D chess on Trump's part. I don't know. I keep hearing that, but if that's true, then why would he have done the tariffs? And I think that's stupid and counterproductive. So I don't know. I'm just not buying it. Let's jump into this next clip.
Well, I'll tell you what victims want. They want.
Yeah, let me set this one up. So Clay Higgins voted no on this bill, right? Because he said he wanted to protect the victims and the victims' names and all this kind of stuff. Well, look here are the victims.
Justice. And they have held compelling press conferences, even as early as this morning and throughout the day. They have met with lawmakers. Rachel, you have talked to a number of survivors. I understand you were able to catch up with some of them that were there paying attention to this vote live on the Hill. Just give us some perspective here.
Do these women look like they're concerned that people know who they are? I mean, they're on TV, okay? If you're on TV, people can figure out who you are. Okay, there's no way to remain anonymous if you're on TV. So I just think that's a bunch of crap. I don't think these women are way past that. They want justice. They want all these men that were involved to pay because at least to be removed from polite society. Maybe they don't go to jail. Maybe they get sued or something. I don't know, but at least they can't be considered legitimate business people and stuff like that. They need to be shunned in polite society. But they certainly don't look like they're trying to hide their identity to me. They're on ABC News, for Christ's sake. Come on, give me a break.
Of how these women coming together, standing up in a group, holding this press conferences has made an impact on all of this.
Yeah, Karen, we were just walking back over here to the steps of the Capitol because outside of one of the entrances here to the House, we saw a number of those victims, the survivors of.
Okay. Yeah. So I don't think these women are trying to keep their identity secret or anything like, or, they're not concerned about their protection at this point. At this point, they're involved and they're trying to throw some disinfectant in the sense of putting more light on the subject. So, yeah, I just think that's just not really what's going on here. All right, the last thing I want to bring up is, in my mind, the star of the show. This is Thomas Massey, And the reason I think he's the star of the show, him and a guy named Ro Khanna and Marjorie Taylor Greene, they pushed this when nobody wanted it. They were holding hearings and asking Kash Patel questions and various other officials questions and putting pressure on the administration. And Trump is, I don't know if y'all know or not, but Marjorie Taylor Greene has since announced her intention to resign in January of 2026, 1 year before her term is up. And I think Trump's probably looking at that like, yeah, I won. I drove her out. I don't think that's what's going on at all. I don't think Trump won this, unless it's this 4D chess kind of thing. Trump was clearly not wanting this to come out. Again, unless it's some sort of 4D chess deal. Marjorie Taylor Greene and Thomas Massie won this. I think if you go listen to Marjorie Taylor Greene's interview with Tucker Carlson, you kind of get a sense of her frustration with the political process, the political system, and just the fact that these people aren't really representing us. They're representing somebody, but not the people of the United States. And she just doesn't see the point in it. She has a family, she's got kids, and she's spending all this time up there. I think it really just has to do with that. She's just sick by the whole thing and wants to get out of it. Marjorie Taylor Greene is a multimillionaire already. She was a multimillionaire when she got there. Her parents, her family ran a very successful construction company. I think as far as I know, it still runs, or they sold it or something. So she doesn't need to be up there swimming around with these sickos and people that are just lying and cheating every day. I think that's what's going on with her resignation. I don't think it has anything to do with Trump beating her. So yeah, I think Thomas Massie was the star of the show. He was talking about this when nobody wanted to talk about it, when everybody was giving up on it. And I think this guy's the best guy in Congress, regardless of what Trump says. Marjorie Taylor Greene was maybe the second best, but now she's going to be leaving. So I don't know. There's just not going to be any good people in Congress anymore. But let's listen to what he has to say. I think this is important, and I just think this guy is the guy that really pressed this to happen.
Well, he got tired of me winning, so he joined our side. I have no animosity toward him. I regret that it got personal for some folks, but it never has for me. It's always been about the survivors.
What do you think it's a reversal? After months of fighting to him.
Well, the Speaker, the Attorney General, the FBI Director, the President, and the Vice President could have saved us all this time and embarrassment, frankly, for our own party if they'd just done the right thing 4 months ago.
Do you believe him, Congressman? For weeks he's been pushing against this. Now he says he supports it. Do you buy it?
He's only supporting it because the President told him to support it.
No,
that's what Mike Johnson does.
No, I'm talking about, do you buy President Trump saying that he wants the House to pass this resolution?
Well, I'm concerned that now he's opening a flurry of investigations, and I believe they may be trying to use those investigations as a predicate for not releasing the files.
Okay, I'm going to stop right there, because if the FBI does this and the Trump administration is behind it, Trump is going to get run out of office. Okay, that's just going to happen. The guy, I think he's a little. People have about had it. There's a guy named Nick Fuentes that you guys may or may not know. His numbers are going through the roof. Okay, every day this guy's getting 100,000 or 200,000 more listeners on his show, and he was a big proponent of Trump. But this kind of thing right here, this stonewalling, where let's open up an investigation on, the guy's been dead since 2018 or 2019. And now they want to open up an investigation for what? For what purpose? They already know everything that they could possibly know about this situation. Well, I'll tell you why. Because if you have an ongoing investigation, when people ask you questions about it, you can say, well, there's an ongoing investigation, and it's not appropriate for us to answer questions about that at this time. And it just kind of fades away. This is a tactic. And this is what Thomas Massie's talking about right now. And I'm just saying that if the president and the FBI start doing this, Trump will be leaving office early, in my opinion. That's what I think is going to happen.
It's my concern.
You think they'll try to block it?
Well, they will. I'm afraid they're going to try to use a provision of the law that allows you not to release these materials if they're subject of an ongoing investigation and would harm, and the release of which would harm the ongoing investigation.
So what do you think this is all about for President Trump? First, he was blocking this, pushing Republicans to block this for so long. Now he's reversing course, and he has the power to release the full files anyway.
Well, it's pretty simple. For 4 months, he thought the best thing for him was to keep the files secret, and somebody convinced him that the best thing for him was to release the files. And if they're serious about it, they should release them right now.
Yeah, this is exactly right. And he also thought it was important to talk about releasing them during the campaign. He spent months and months and months talking about releasing these files and getting this out into the open. What was really going on? What happened? Who was Jeffrey Epstein? What was he doing? Who was involved? What kind of impact did it have on our government and the processes that happen in government? And who's getting rich? Who's breaking the law? Who's just whatever there is there, whatever the there is. He thought that was important during the campaign because he's running around telling everybody he's going to release the files. And then they made this big show about releasing the files. They had all these influencers show up. They're holding all these binders. And then 2 days later, you start hearing about how, oh, there's nothing new in any of these binders. This information is already known. Everything in these binders is already known to the public. So they didn't release anything. And then Pam Bondi is getting these questions at the White House. And Trump famously interrupts and says, "Excuse me, are you asking about Jeffrey Epstein, that creep? You know, why are people still concerned about this guy? You know?" So he went from being America first. Let's just talk. This is the way Nick Fuentes is talking about it. I think this is the accurate way to think about this. America first, release the Epstein files because there's potentially Mossad and our CIA are involved in this, and not for the benefit of America, but for the benefit of either Israel or rich and powerful people in America or whatever, okay? So he went from campaigning on it, being America first, to getting in office, then telling everybody, kind of letting everybody down, there's not really going to be anything. So that's not America first, you know, and this is the way Nick Fuentes is talking about it. Now the Congress has gone over his head and said, no, you will release them. And now he's decided to get on board and say, okay, yeah, I'm America first. But this America first movement is very, very powerful and growing. And it's interesting because some of these people that are now MAGA or claim to be America first were never Trumpers. I mean, it's only recently that they've gotten on board with Trump. And it has something to do, it seems to have something to do with his alignment with Netanyahu in Israel, and his willingness to bury these files and things like that. You know, who knows? We may never find out about this. Or we might find out about it, and you're going to see thousands, multiple thousands of people probably, who are going to be removed from polite society. I hope it's the latter, but we'll see. All right, let's jump back into what Thomas Massey's talking about.
It's that simple.
Why do you think he is working so hard not to get them released for so many months? What do you think the real reason is?
These files implicate billionaires and friends of his and political donors that he's trying to protect. And Epstein also had close ties to our own intelligence agencies and Israel's intelligence agencies. That's why there's so much effort in trying to stop this. And I do believe they'll try to stop it somewhere else. And that's going to backfire on them too.
So the president's saying he'll sign it. You don't buy that?
No, I think he'll sign it. I want to be there at the signing party.
Think he'll be invited?
I've never seen somebody not get invited to sign their own bill.
But what was just a personal nature of this? I mean, again, he goes after you, your wife, calls Marjorie Taylor Greene a traitor.
Let's be clear. He went after my late wife and my current wife.
What do you think about that?
I think it's a new low for him. But again, we laughed it off. It's more to his detriment than mine that he, put something like that out. But I think it was beyond the pale. And if that's what it took for him to go that far to realize he needs to support this instead of opposing it, then that's okay.
Yeah, what a great guy this Thomas Massey is. You know, I think the real answer, the reason he went after Massey and his former wife, his wife died, and he ended up getting remarried, and so he went after both of his wives. You know, his dead wife and his new wife. But you know, this is just what Trump does. Trump gets nasty, and it tends to kind of shift the focus and the conversation away from what he wants. And that's why he does it. It's a tactic. It's a technique. It's a skill that he has. And when I say skill, I mean anybody can be nasty, but he can be nasty in a way that's... Have you ever been around somebody that is maybe mean or says something off color or whatever, and you're standing next to him and it makes you uncomfortable? Okay? That's the way Trump is, right? Trump can say the thing that makes everybody around him uncomfortable, but it doesn't seem to make him uncomfortable. And so this is a skill. This is his superpower. And that's why he uses it. And, you know, he thinks it's kind of the politics of political assassination, you know, character assassination, I guess, really more than political assassination. But the reason he does it is because he's had a lot of success with it, and it tends to work. But the problem in this particular case is everybody can see that Thomas Massey is trying to do the right thing that we want all the people in government to do. And he's the only one, and him and Marjorie Taylor Greene are the only ones trying to do the right thing. And everybody else is just playing politics. And that's just the reality of the situation.
By the way, my wife has laughed about it. She did tell me to invite Trump to the wedding, and I didn't, so she blames me for him getting mad.
Are you optimistic this will pass tomorrow?
Yeah, I think it's going to pass. I think it's going to pass with a veto-proof majority.
Do you think the speaker will support it?
I think begrudgingly he has to at this point.
Congressman, you obviously had your differences with President Trump in the past.
And he did.
But Congressman Greene was one of his closest allies, one of his strongest supporters. What do you make of the fact that over the Epstein Files it prompted this such a public and searing breakup?
Well, Marjorie represents the base. I mean, she represents
Exactly
what we campaigned on, more so than me, even the populist movement that, you know, brought Trump into the White House. And when he told his supporters that they're no longer his supporters if they still want the Epstein Files released, he lost a lot of supporters, but Marjorie didn't. And she, you know, she's in favor of finding justice for the survivors. And so she won the argument.
Do you think that President Trump has lost his touch on the MAGA base, has lost his understanding of the MAGA base?
I think on aspects of fiscal responsibility, on aspects of starting wars overseas and getting into regime change, and on this case of releasing the Epstein Files, I think he has strayed away from the things that he campaigned on.
Exactly right. And he's exactly right about Marjorie Taylor Greene. They won the argument, okay? They're the ones that are America first. This guy you're listening to right now, Thomas Massey and Marjorie Taylor Greene, are more America first than Donald Trump. That's just where we're at now. Now, why is that? And this is kind of the crux of the whole question that surrounds this Epstein situation. Why is it that someone who campaigns on America first gets elected into office with huge majorities, majorities. Aside from this big majority that Joe Biden got in 2020, it was one of the biggest majorities in modern history, okay? And that's me saying that. That's not Trump saying it. If Trump says it, you're like, yeah, whatever. But that's me saying that, okay? Someone who's objective and looking at what the facts are. Now, I said the whole Joe Biden thing kind of tongue-in-cheek because Joe Biden didn't get those votes. That's a lie. That's a discussion for another day, maybe. And who cares anyway? It's in the past. As long as it doesn't happen again, I don't care. But this guy, Trump, ran on America first. This is what propelled him into office. And then he got into office and he strayed from America first. This is what Nick Fuentes is just going ballistic about, and people are listening, and he's gathering support. And meanwhile, people are calling him Hitler and he loves Stalin and, all this stupid stuff, but they're missing the forest for the trees. They're missing the fact that Nick Fuentes is America first, just like Tom Massey is, and just like Marjorie Taylor Greene is. And if Trump wants to stay in office, and I think there's a real threat, okay, especially if they start doing some maneuvering around these files and trying to create some investigations so that they don't have to release anything. If that starts to happen, I think Trump can get impeached. And I mean legitimately impeached this time. None of this bogus stuff that they did during his first term. This would be real impeachments where there's real violations of the law and there's real Democrat and Republican support for him to leave office. So this is Trump better get his shit together, because this is getting real quick. And I'm not sure anybody in his administration really understands how serious this is for their jobs. We're not even 1 year into Trump's presidency, and by his own doing, he's undoing his presidency. See, the difference between this 4 years and the last 4 years is the previous 4 years that Trump was in, it was all hoax. And that's true. Everything was a hoax. Nothing that they said that he did or he was involved with none of it was true. They used the intelligence agencies to change the story in such a way that made him look bad and gave them a predicate to investigate him, all that stuff. None of that stuff was true. Tulsi Gabbard is released hundreds of documents to the effect, okay? But this is true. This thing that's happening right now, this Epstein thing, and moving away from America first and alienating people that are America first in the party, this is a real thing. And now you have a real vote by Congress where the House and the Senate both voted to release these files, to instruct the Justice Department to release this information. So now if you get some sort of silly stuff going on, well, we've opened up new investigations and now that's an ongoing investigation, we really can't release anything. You get anything like that, he's going to get slapped with obstruction of justice, and he's going to get impeached for real this time. Okay, that's what I predict. And it'll be bipartisan. That's the other thing, it'll be different. So keep an eye out for that. He better get his head screwed on straight pretty quick, or he's going to find himself removed from office. And I think that's a real possibility. So with that great news, and maybe that is great news. Maybe we get J.D. Vance and we get the Epstein Files released, all these people that are implicated. Some of them get prosecuted. Some of them just get blacklisted. Okay, we just ignore them and make them go away. Maybe they get sued. All kinds of things could happen that basically sideline them in the future. And so hopefully that'll happen. All right, with that, I want to wrap up the show. Thank you guys for coming in. Go comment on the show, share the show, go to YouTube and like the show, subscribe to the channel. All these things kind of help this YouTube algorithm. The reason I started doing this on YouTube is to get that YouTube algorithm working in our favor. So please go and participate in that and do your part. I would really appreciate it. And of course, you can always do the same old thing, like forward the show or send it to somebody you know or whatever. So this is not, we're not talking about the normal things on here. We're talking about things that I don't know. I don't want to say that I'm trying to educate the public or anything, because that's not really what I'm trying to. I'm trying to bring awareness to what the real problems are. And the problems are never, well, the Democrats are doing this and the Republicans are doing that. That's never really the problem. The problem is always something like this Epstein thing. It's something where both of them are implicated and they're just protecting each other and kicking the can down the road, business as usual. And so that's what this show is about, because all that results in tyranny, basically. And this show is about liberty and tyranny, and that's what we want to bring awareness to. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and end the show. Thank you for coming in. Thanks for listening. And peace. Peace to all you guys. Have a happy Thanksgiving that's coming up. And we got a holiday season coming up. And remember the reason for the season when we start getting closer to Christmas. And keep coming back, and we'll keep making shows. Thanks, everybody. Peace.